YouTube? Welcome back to UniXDBS, and today we are here with a Dragon Ball video, and that Dragon Ball video is actually about to be talking about Nats. Nats is actually just over 2 weeks away before we're going to be competing in the biggest, if not, unfortunately this tournament season, pretty much the only real tournament worth going to this year. So we got a lot of stuff to talk about, but we're going to condense it as much as possible. Things I do want to say is that we are going to start splitting our content very heavily between One Piece and this game, and adding in more battle spirits as more news comes out. So we're going to start branching out. It's going to be kind of more like UniX TCG, but you know, we're going to keep the classic OG name. But we're going to be playing all three games, so it is what it is. We still got a One Piece contest going on. I'll probably put up a little snippet about that later, not in this video, but just, yeah. And we're just doing a whole lot of things. We're streaming on Twitch, we're cooking on a couple different channels, so if you want to support the brand and see a new era of content creation from the Universe X brand, then just go down the links and check something out. Subscribe where you can, follow where you can, and just, yeah, every little bit goes a little way. So, when it comes to this, right, we're going to be seeing a fair amount of stuff at Nationals. Before the most recent ban list, what we were looking at was essentially a format where Sin and Gogeta would dominate, but most people that have been doing their testing found that Vegito was very much so a contender as well. Vegito kind of got in and made its debut as the third king of the format, if you were doing your testing before it came out. However, we've had a lot of changes here, namely the huge defensive and utility nerfs to Red. Gogeta Unison can no longer free play Broly Crown, which means they'll have to play energy to do it, which is going to change the entire dynamic of the turn. You can't crown your opponent on, 4 energy by hitting them with a +1 or +2 to the Gogeta Unison to check to see if they have Dirty Burst in hand. I mean, if they do have Dirty Burst in hand, they'll probably use it right then, but in that case, they may not have another one for next turn. The point is, it changes the entire geography of it. Sin can't hit you with the free Broly before going into their place, so the turn effectively has 1 less energy when they have to face check you with a Crown. The loss of, the errata of Violent Rays has you in a position where a lot of 20Ks to 24Ks, 25Ks, they slide right under. And you can always swing with a 25K and combo up to make Z energy and take it 30K. A lot of things are going to go under Violent Rays now. And that's something that Red could always rely on. Let me just beat the crap out of you, knowing that with 1 energy open, I can't be crowned, but I can Violent Rays and discard, and most of your effective things cannot swing on me. By the way, I'm Red, so a lot of the times, like if I'm Gogeta, I'm going to be able to just straight up out combo you if you're not swinging that high. So, huge shifts. Yamcha going down to 1 makes it essentially like just a one of, if it happens, it happens, but you can't just say, oh, they have to have Yamcha, as you used to do when they were at 4. So there's a lot of things that have changed. But what those changes have done has not hindered the offensive ability of Red whatsoever. Gogeta can still do all the things offensively it could. Sin can too. In fact, now that the defense is gone from these Red decks, you are now looking at many Red decks that are trying to see how close to the ground they can hit. Sin pretty much going from divisive, do I play mid-range Sin or aggro Sin, to almost exclusively aggro Sin. Gogeta also leaning way more into its aggressive side because it can no longer just play that mid-range game behind these very overtuned Red defensive cards. But at the same time, the balance does shift because many of these battle card floodgates are now able to go free. Resolve Renewed Vegeta was able to be, he was pretty much locked to the Vegeta deck. He was locked to the Vegito deck. And that means now that Sin, Gogeta, all these other Red decks can no longer just sit here and go, yeah, even when you're trying to put your hands up on a floodgate, here's my Resolve Renewed, E to C, like, just die. So, with that balance being torn up, now that your defense is lower, you have to play a lot more carefully. You can just aggro your opponent, but as a Red deck, the ability to be clapped back for like Uber game is higher than it's ever been before. And this puts Red in a position where it needs to play a lot more smart. Like, it needs to play smarter. It needs to play more cautiously, and the skill cap has gone up for Red. Besides the skill cap going up for Red, we're now in a position where other decks have room to breathe. If you can't just wholeheartedly devote your offense and then leave 1 energy up, you're not going to be as aggressive sometimes. Or if a deck can tune itself to survive turns 2 and 3 and stabilize on 4, you might be in for decks that you never really had to worry about the same way. This leaves a massive amount of room for blue to crop up, and in some cases yellow. So obviously after this list, unfortunately red is still kind of the top dog here. Sin, Gogeta, and Vegito are still here rocking it, just doing their thing. And when you want to go outside of that, you have a brand new Gogeta deck, Gogeta BR, that is sitting here making waves. Because of the new, because of the new Z Battle card, you're able to search and then set up for Critical Combination. And Critical Combination is a dual attack triple strike. So on turn 2, especially when you go first, you're able to potentially just put down this humongous 35k triple strike dual attack, and your opponent's on 1 energy. Chances are they're going down to 5, and then if you don't have a test me opposition, you are just getting straight punted down to 2. And once they're at that point, the leader is able to lock out certain counters. It gets pretty ridiculous. There's lots of talk about it, so you'll be able to find it in the discussion group. I believe the person who just won a 16-person God rare event will tell you all about it. But if you guys want me to make a more in-depth video on that, I can. Past that though, yeah, you have that deck cropping up. I personally, like, all the drama aside, I personally don't see it. The deck hinges on people not really liking to play hard negates, sparking negates, keeping 1 energy up. Because if you stop the Critical Combination from punching out most of your life, even if you only stop 1 attack, you let it hit you for 3 damage and you stop 1 attack, you can then just remove it with a Realm of the Gods card. The only time it gets really dangerous is when they actually see the Broly SER and play that turn 2. Because outside of yellow, a lot of decks do not have the ability to mess with it. Now that being said, ye old boy right here, Vegito, will bounce it for free to hand, and then it'll get removed from the game because it's a secret rare leaving the field. So even in that regards, I am not quite sure where this deck stands, because yellow is going to be able to be played a lot easier than it was before, and yellow makes that deck look laughable. And then on top of that, Vegito will, that deck has 1 turn to do what it's supposed to do, and just by playing the game naturally, Vegito will bounce it and draw 2. So you were really looking at a very flash in the pan, in my opinion, deck, and I think a lot of people are freaking out about it, but we will see come Nationals. But that's, like, for the most part, the red suite. You have Vegito, Sin, and Gogeta. I think Gogeta may be the weakest one of the 3, not by a terrible amount, but definitely. Sin, I think, is the strongest of the 3, with Vegito being firmly in the middle, Gogeta being rogue, and then red is still, to the most part, overtuned, where you could probably get away with certain decks. Like GT kind of falls on the wayside because it got hurt so bad with the generic losses. Yamcha, Resolve Renewed, Valkyrie, that really hurt it. U7 can still be dangerous in its aggro variant, but again, that's a lot to bank on with some of the aggro that's in the format and some of the mid-range that's creeping in. Now moving past that, you've got blue. And blue is going to be in a weird position now because blue has some breathing room. The ability for blue to stabilize is actually quite high. There is going to be a chance that you are going to have your main deck slotted for aggro or late game, and your side deck slotted for the opposite, because blue goes in a very different direction. You could have mid-range decks like Gamma. Gamma can actually play in this format. You have mid-range deck like Gamma or SS3, both with slightly different gearing options, but both with powerful defensive plays because of their ability to untap mad energy. You have the ability to see decks like SS4, which will try to ramp like just ridiculously high, and then hit you with massive cards like the Super Saiyan 4 or Super Saiyan 4 Rise of the Super Warrior, Vegeta, to just ramp and gain cards in hand. Pot of Greed plus ramp 2, things like that. You can run into 7ku, which is going to be able to ramp high and play big cards like Whis and just go in off of that. You can even run into Beerus. I've seen Beerus actually able to compete very well in this current format, and that's scary. You're running into two spectrums, like early game aggro, late game shenanigans, and those are very hard to have outs for in the same deck. You'd have to be a very powerful mid-range who's capable of solidifying your game state, because that means you can stabilize on aggro, but kill mid-range for late game before they can get to their late game. And that's a little hard in itself, because if you make a mid-range deck, a strong mid-range deck, you are always susceptible to the fastest of aggros, and if the game gets away from you, you pretty much just have to scoop it out versus the hardest of controls. So outside of blue doing that, you now also have the ability for yellow to get in there. And yellow is very precarious because I say far and away the best yellow leader is Monkey Goku. He's able to set up a lot of barrier blockers. He's able to utilize Slug because these barrier blockers will be harder to remove, so Slug will always have Bond. He has an amazing push turn the turn he decides to kill you. 3 life against that deck is probably the worst space in the game when they have 5 or 6 energy, because you will be double struck crit with like Champa. You will be double strike critical with cooler backup, and then you will likely immediately catch the secret rare or Mira Oolong. So the deck is very, 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 very strong, does yellow things, and I think yellow has a couple more leaders that could be rogue. Like, I'm personally very much so enjoying yellow Piccolo, but I feel like yellow has a couple leaders that could be considered in the rogue category. Unfortunately, green didn't really get anything that helps it. You will always have the people that play green that really, really go off on green. Like King Cole will probably still get some wins off somebody. Majin Vegeta could still blitz somebody every now and then, not consistently enough in my opinion. You've even got Dredgeku, which got a brand new Z card, which was actually a very, very, very strong Z card. So I think that all these things are considerable rogue picks, but I don't see green going in and just blowing up the format. Nothing has been released that brings all of green's unique good pieces together, despite them having very, very good pieces in the past couple sets like Faded Rival and whatnot. Black is almost in the same boat. I actually think that if I had more time and more testing, I think I could try to make a black Trunks work very well. The new secret rare is very, very strong, but I would not base my Nationals run on it. Maybe a Zenkai Cup, but I would not bet my Nationals run on the God Trunks right now. I just do not see it happening. So all in all, I think you are looking at red being the Titan with 3 main decks and a rogue deck. You're looking at blue having a whole lot of options to be able to go into, most of them involving ramp, because that's just the flavor of blue right now, and some very unfortunate cards. I mean, between between Rise of the Super Warriors and Android 17 turning the tide, you have a lot of ignorant combos that go in there, plus the secret rare. So be careful about that. When you play blue, you always have to play like you're running hatch, but there are just going to be some turns where you can't just assume they're holding hatch because they're big brained. When you get to a certain point and you know that, like, at this point with their amount of cards in hand, their amount of life, and your board, if they could have hatched the first swing, they would have hatched the first swing. Sometimes you just gotta push and be like, this dude's probably holding Kaioken because he couldn't kill me yet. Blow them out, because that is what gets you. You play like they have hatch and they're just like, JK, I never had it, but you play like I did. Here's Kaioken, bloom. That hurts. So blue is going to be definitely a contender, and I think yellow is going to be the 3rd smallest percentage contender. And of course, people are always going to play what they want to play. So you're going to see some black. You might see a green or 2. But for the most part, those are spice seekers in my opinion. What you should be gearing for is yellow, blue, and understand that sometimes yellow operates in the same spaces as blue. If you're looking at a mid-range blue deck, yellow will probably do most of its work in those same windows. But just remember that blue will have insanely high ceilings. You get past turn 5 and blue will just start doing things that you didn't think were possible in the game, because we haven't gotten there in a while if you haven't been playing or grinding or testing online. So yeah, if you want me to do a follow-up to this video, we can definitely go down and talk more deck by deck by deck. We only have about 2 weeks before Nationals, but there is time to make a video like that. I hope you guys enjoyed the discussion talk, and I will see you guys the very next episode. Thanks.